The first Mishnah in Sukkah brings a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim if there is a limit how high a sukkah can be. The Chachamim limit it to 20 amos. According to Rabbah in the Gemara, if it is any higher, one will sit in the sukkah not being able to see the roof. Since there are no restrictions on the materials used to build the walls of a sukkah, as many of us sit in stone-walled sukkahs in the old city, one would never realize that he is living in a temporary dwelling. Why is that so important? As long as one follows the law of using temporary materials for the roof, why should it matter if the one sitting there can see it or not? We see, according to Rabbah, it clearly does matter. The purpose of our dwelling in a sukkah for 7 days is to be aware that we are susceptible to the elements. It may be cold and we do not have heat, or it may be hot and we have no air conditioning. As long as the situation is not unbearable, we have to accept a little inconvenience and suffering to do this mitzvah. Let's develop this idea a little more. The Torah mentions that when Avram Avinu returned from Egypt, he was laden with gold and silver. He became quite wealthy in Egypt. The 3rd day after his circumcision, it says, he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. This event was well after his return from Egypt. Why did Avram continue to live as a Bedouin and not build himself a house? Evidently, this was an integral part of his ideology, not to get too comfortable in this world. He truly believed in his temporal state in this world to be utilized as a preparation for the afterlife. Indulging in too much luxury as a palatial home could distract him from the truth of his existence. We could assume, although he could afford a home, it was a spiritual objective to avoid such a luxury. Let's examine another strange event in the Torah. Egypt enslaved the Jews for 210 years in Mitzrayim. Hashem promised them he would redeem them. He sends Moshe and Aaron to bring plagues upon the Egyptians to free them. Where do the Jews end up after they leave Mitzrayim? Not in the land of milk and honey, but in the desert. We can be sure that all the people's reactions initially were disappointment. We know that throughout the 40 years there were incidents in the desert that also indicated many continued to be dissatisfied. Can we blame them? After suffering in Egypt for so many years, they are placed in a place where the Torah states clearly, Vayancha vayarivecha, I caused you to suffer and go hungry in the desert. We understand they received their first gift in the desert, the Torah, and their second, to learn in a place of very little distraction. When there are plenty restaurants and malls, beautiful places to travel, luxurious homes to buy, it is difficult to keep one's mind focused on Hashem and His Torah. The first generation, in order to make a true acquisition on the Torah, had to learn undistracted. But also to realize when we have the most important gift in the world, where we live is not so important. We are striving to better ourselves to become perfected people worthy of a great place in the afterlife. So if this was and is our true function, why did we leave the desert and why do we live in palatial homes most of the year except for 7 days? When one goes to a movie theater to see a movie, he is shown coming attractions to whet his appetite to come again. We have to understand our great movie is the afterlife. Our coming attraction is this world. Hashem gives us only a glimpse into our ultimate existence in this lifetime to whet our appetite. For example, Shabbos. Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba. It is a taste of the afterlife if enjoyed properly. It comes once a week. We eat matzah, not bagels, once a year for 7 days to remind us that the bread without the yeast may not taste as good, but we can be sustained with such bread. Why work so hard to have the bagel and distract ourselves from our true spiritual goals when you can live just as well without it? These are lessons to help us realize that our body is an overcoat, that one day we will remove it, and the food will not matter, only how much Torah we learned and how many mitzvahs we perform to transform ourselves to unselfish, caring people, ultimately into angels in human form. The sukkah is part of this great lesson. We do not have to overly concern ourselves with how big our homes are, as long as we can raise our families with a modicum of comfort. We thought we could not live without it. You are in a sukkah for 7 days and nothing happened to you. But it's even deeper than this. We know that the sukkah symbolizes the structures that our forefathers lived in the desert. According to Rabbi Akiva, they were ananei akava. According to the Bach, when sitting in the sukkah, we should lechatchila intend on doing the mitzvah and also think that the sukkah is a zecher, it's a commemoration for the clouds of glory in the desert. We were protected from the elements by being surrounded by the Shekhinah. This is the joy of Sukkot, Zeman Simchaseinu. Hashem purified us on Yom Kippur so we can break down all the barriers between us and Him. We can sit in the sukkah and be surrounded by Him, be protected from the elements or any danger, not because we have a technologically advanced alarm or security system, but the Shekhinah is watching over us. Let us be zocha this year to integrate this fundamental teaching. It is only imagination as long as we do not make the effort to experience this as reality. The more we believe it, the more true it is.